If you were to take a brand new, freshly washed T-shirt, right, and pull it straight out of the dryer and then view it under a high-powered microscope, you wouldn't just see clean cotton fibers. You would actually see this permanent, sticky layer of chemical sludge.
Which is, yeah, it's a pretty horrifying image, honestly.
It is. So welcome to a deep dive that is going to, I think, completely change how you look at a pile of fresh laundry. Today, we're investigating what is essentially a widespread epidemic of skin irritation, and it's happening right inside your home.
Right, and we are pulling from a really extensive body of clinical data today for you. We're looking at guidelines from the British Association of Dermatologists, a lot of gynecological research on vulval conditions and, direct chemical analyses of everyday laundry and personal care products.
Because the mission today is to figure out how these invisible residues from things we use literally every single day, specifically synthetic fabric softeners and heavily fragranced detergents, how they're actively triggering severe contact dermatitis and chronic skin conditions. I mean, I've always thought of washing clothes as just making them clean.
Most people do.
Yeah, so it is just staggering to realize how chemically complex and honestly kind of aggressive that process actually is.
It really highlights this fascinating clash between modern convenience and human biology. We're going to look closely at the exact mechanisms today, like how these specific chemical residues physically interact with your skin's natural barrier, and why suddenly your body is treating your favorite t-shirt like a hostile threat.
Right. Okay, so let's start with the basics of what is actually clinging to the fabric we wear 24 hours a day. When I pour that standard blue liquid into my washing machine, what is actually happening on a molecular level?
Well, the heavy lifters in basically any liquid detergent are these molecules called surfactants. You'll often see them listed on the back as sodium lauryl sulfate or sodium lauryl sulfate.
Right, the SLS stuff.
Exactly. Their entire job is to seek out fats and oils, encapsulate them into these tiny microbubbles called micelles, and then allow the rinse water to just flush them away. I mean, if we didn't have surfactants, water would just bounce right off the oils trapped in your clothes.
Which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But the clinical data points out a major flaw in how we actually use them in the real world, right?
Yeah.
Because most of us just, fill that little plastic cup to the brim because we assume more soap equals cleaner clothes.
Which is a huge mistake.
Right. And the chemical analyses show that overdosing your detergent can leave anywhere from 139 to over 2,800 parts per million of residue trapped in the fabric. And that's just after a single wash.
Yeah, and think about the physical reality of that residue for a second. If those surfactants aren't fully flushed out during the rinse cycle, they remain totally active within the textile fibers.
Just hanging out in the cotton.
Exactly. So when you put that clothing on, the fabric rubs against your body, transferring those active surfactants directly to your skin. And the issue here is that a surfactant is just a chemical tool, right? It doesn't know the difference between the dirty sebum on a shirt collar and the protective natural lipid layer of your own epidermis.
Right? It just sees oil, and its job is to dissolve oil. Yeah. So it's literally attacking you.
It strips away your skin's natural defense, yeah. This causes what dermatologists call a proteolytic breakdown of the skin barrier. The protective fats on your skin are dissolved, which leads to immediate moisture loss.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, your skin dries out, these tiny microcracks form, and then the inflammatory response just kicks right in.
And that is just the detergent behaving badly because we use too much of it. But as we dig into the dermatological guidelines, there is a much bigger culprit in the laundry room. Like, detergent might leave accidental residue, but conventional fabric softener is an entirely different beast.
That is a really vital distinction to make. Fabric softeners don't just leave accidental residue behind. They are chemically engineered to leave a permanent coating.
Engineered to leave a coating.
Yes, that coating is their entire functional purpose.
Okay, so they contain these things called cationic compounds, usually quaternary ammoniums, I think the sources call them. And from what I understand, this basically just comes down to magnets.
Right, exactly. It's basic electrostatic attraction.
Right, so your wet clothes naturally carry a negative electrical charge in the washing machine. But these softening chemicals, they carry a positive charge, so they just magnetically lock onto the fibers.
Right, and once that electrostatic bond forms, it doesn't just rinse away with water, it coats the fibers in this smooth, lubricating film. And, that film is what makes a scratchy towel feel soft to the touch.
Right, it feels nice.
It feels great, but to achieve that softness, you are sacrificing breathability and absorbency. And more importantly for your skin health, that film is heavily loaded with recognized contact irritants and these intensely concentrated fragrance capsules.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy, because when I realized how this actually works, it genuinely blew my mind.
Yeah, go for it.
Using a synthetic fabric softener is essentially like applying a thick layer of highly perfumed car wax to your clothes, like a wax that is chemically designed to literally resist washing off. And then we wonder why our skin feels suffocated and itchy. I mean, you are actively choosing to wear a permanent chemical film.
That's a perfect analogy. And for someone with a perfectly robust skin barrier, they might not notice a reaction right away. But if your skin is naturally thinner, or if that barrier is compromised in literally any way, those synthetic molecules penetrate the outer layers of the epidermis very easily.
And that triggers the reaction.
Exactly. It triggers a massive cascading inflammatory response.
Hold on, though. I'm trying to make sense of this factually for the listener. Because if I watch, say, a heavy winter sweatshirt in my underwear in the exact same load with the exact same fabric softener, why am I only getting severe contact dermatitis in one specific area? Like, shouldn't my arms and my back be breaking out too?
Well, that comes down to the fundamental differences in human anatomy. The skin on your back or your arms is really thick. It's heavily keratinized, meaning it has this tough outer protective layer, and it's exposed to the air, so it can tolerate that chemical film much better.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the vulva, however, acts as the body's early warning system. It's like a canary in the coal mine for chemical irritants. The vulval epithelium is structurally totally different from the skin on your arm.
Right. The clinical guidelines actually mention it has a significantly higher rate of something called transepidermal water loss, which sounds complicated, but
It just simply means it is highly permeable. Things pass in and out of it much more freely. It doesn't hold a strong defensive barrier line at all.
oh, I see.
Now, take that inherent biological permeability and look at the physical environment. The area is subject to constant occlusion. I mean, it is covered by underwear and clothing, which traps body heat. It's exposed to natural moisture from sweat. And it is constantly subjected to the mechanical friction of walking, sitting, moving around.
Okay, so you have highly permeable tissue, trapped heat, moisture, and this constant friction, all basically physically grinding that car wax layer of fabric softener and those active surfactants directly into the skin.
You're creating the perfect storm, and this combination triggers two distinct types of contact dermatitis. First, you have irritant contact dermatitis. This is direct physical damage. The alkaline residues and trapped moisture physically erode the outer skin layer. Patients usually experience this rapidly, and the primary symptom is often a severe burning or raw pain rather than just an itch.
Just literally burning the skin.
Yeah.
And then the second type is allergic contact dermatitis, which the clinical date notes is an actual immune system response, right?
Right. It's a delayed hypersensitivity reaction. So your immune system identifies the specific allergens, usually the heavy fragrances and preservatives trapped in that softener film, as dangerous invaders.
Like it thinks you're under attack.
Exactly. And this reaction can take hours or even days to manifest, presenting as intense itching, swelling, and sometimes blistering. It is a full-blown immune attack occurring locally on the skin.
That sounds absolutely miserable. And there's also a major demographic factor highlighted in the gynecological research we reviewed, right?
Yep.
It seems this risk just skyrockets for women going through perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah, we really have to look at how hormones dictate skin structure. During menopause, estrogen levels naturally drop, and estrogen is what maintains the thickness, elasticity, and moisture of those specific tissues.
So it's structural.
Exactly. Without that hormonal support, the actual architecture of the skin changes. It loses collagen, the tissue becomes incredibly thin, and what doctors call friable.
Friable.
Yeah, which basically means it tears or microabrasions form under very little friction.
Wow. So the laundry routine that, never bothered someone in their 20s is suddenly triggering this debilitating dermatitis in their 50s simply because their skin's natural armor has just thinned out.
Yeah. Their defenses are physically reduced. The chemical exposure hasn't changed at all, but the body's ability to tolerate that constant 24-hour exposure to laundry residues has drastically dropped.
Okay, so let's say a listener puts this all together. They realize their heavily perfumed fabric softener and, massive doses of detergent are causing this chronic irritation. The immediate logical reaction is to run to the grocery store and buy the detergent bottle covered in green leaves that says plant-based or eco-friendly or sensitive baby formula.
Right, of course.
But looking at the chemical analyses in these sources, this seems to be a massive marketing trap.
Oh, it's a huge trap. Marketing departments rely heavily on our automatic assumption that natural or plant-based automatically means hypoallergenic. But from a chemical perspective, that assumption is actually quite dangerous.
because natural doesn't mean safe.
Right. Just because a compound is synthesized by a plant instead of in a lab doesn't mean your immune system will tolerate it.
I was actually stunned reading about this part. The research specifically calls out natural essential oils, things like limon, which is extracted from citrus peels, and linalool from lavender.
Very common ingredients.
Right. And these are heavily marketed as soothing, natural alternatives. But globally, they're actually among the most common triggers for allergic contact dermatitis.
They really are, and limon is particularly deceptive because of how it reacts to the environment.
What do you mean?
Well, when limon is exposed to the air, it oxidizes. And that oxidation process physically alters the molecule, turning it into a much more potent, aggressive allergen.
Oh my God.
So that expensive organic lavender and lemon eco-detergent someone buys specifically to heal their skin, it's actually loading their clothing with recognized sensitizers.
That is so frustrating. So even if a listener goes out and finds a truly fragrance-free, plant-based detergent to avoid these essential oils entirely, the research says their skin still isn't safe. Because what else is hiding in these liquid bottles just to keep them stable on the shelf?
Preservatives. Specifically, this family of chemicals called isothiazolinones, often abbreviated in the literature as MIT and MCIT.
MIT, okay.
They are powerful biocides. Manufacturers add them to liquid detergents, fabric softeners, and household cleaners to prevent mold and bacteria from growing while the product sits in a warehouse or on a store shelf for months.
Which, I mean, makes sense. Nobody wants to pour a cup of moldy detergent into their washing machine.
No, of course not. But the trade-off is severe. The incidence of allergic contact dermatitis caused by MIT has skyrocketed globally over the last decade. They are incredibly potent skin sensitizers. And the most alarming part is where we are finding them outside the laundry room.
Yeah, this brings up the baby wipe dermatitis study in the clinical literature, which is just heartbreaking, honestly.
It is a perfect example of this chemical trap. In that specific study, dermatologists documented severe, intractable hand eczema in parents.
Just on their hands.
Yeah, and these parents were suffering for months, completely unable to figure out the cause. It turned out to be the moist baby wipes they were using for diaper changes. The wipes were marketed as gentle and for sensitive skin, but they contained MIT as a preservative. So the parents' hands were constantly exposed to the biocide, triggering a severe allergic response.
That is wild.
Yeah.
You're using a product explicitly marketed for an infant's sensitive skin, and the hidden preservative is powerful enough to cause chronic eczema on an adult's hands.
Exactly.
And that actually leads us into an even more concerning area. I was looking at the clinical analyses of feminine hygiene products, things like sanitary pads, daily washes, intimate sprays, and I was completely lost. Like, why on earth are industrial chemicals showing up in products designed for such sensitive areas?
It comes down to what chemists call volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. In the manufacturing of sanitary pads, for example, companies need to stick the pad to the underwear, right? And they need to prevent liquid from leaking through.
Okay, so adhesives.
Right, so they use VOCs as industrial adhesives and synthetic moisture barriers. And then they also pump these products full of VOC-based fragrances to mask odors.
But we've already established how highly permeable the vulval tissue is.
And that permeability is exactly why this shifts from a localized skin rash to a systemic health concern. The chemical analyses show these hygiene products frequently contain compounds like geraniol, hexyl cinnamaldehyde, and benzyl benzoate.
Okay.
Because the vulvar tissue lacks a thick keratinized barrier and has an incredibly rich blood supply, molecules of this size can cross the epithelial barrier and enter the bloodstream much faster than they would through, say, the skin on your arm.
Wait, so they're getting into the bloodstream, and the research points out these specific compounds aren't just allergens. They're actually endocrine-disrupting chemicals.
Yes, EDCs. These are substances that basically mimic, block, or interfere with your body's natural hormone.
That is terrifying.
It really is. Studies have demonstrated that chemicals like geraniol and benzoate have the actual molecular structure to interact directly with estrogen receptors in the body. In laboratory settings, these specific VOCs have even been shown to induce estrogenic responses in human breast cancer cell lines.
Are you serious?
Very. So we are intentionally applying known endocrine disruptors directly to one of the most highly permeable, vascularly rich areas of the human body.
All under the guise of freshness and hygiene. It is incredibly unsettling. I mean, we have mapped out a pretty intimidating chemical landscape here, from the sticky fabric softeners in the laundry room to the hidden biocides in the bathroom.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But the goal of this deep dive isn't to leave anyone feeling helpless. The medical guidelines we reviewed offer a very specific, actionable framework. So what does the dermatologist-approved clean laundry protocol actually look like?
Well, the very first step is often the most difficult for people to adopt just because it goes against decades of marketing. You must completely eliminate conventional fabric softener from your home.
Just throw it in the trash. No more perfumed car wax for the t-shirts.
Exactly. It serves absolutely no hygienic purpose and is a primary driver of dermatitis. If you want soft towels without the chemical film, the medical alternative is remarkably simple, actually. It's just plain white household vinegar.
Okay, wait, how does that actually work mechanically? Like, why does vinegar make things soft?
So you put about 50 milliliters, which is like 2 or 3 tablespoons, into the fabric softener compartment of your machine. White vinegar contains acetic acid. Most detergent residues left on your clothes are alkaline.
Oh, so they cancel out.
Right. The acetic acid chemically neutralizes those alkaline residues, breaking them down so they wash away. It also dissolves the natural limescale deposits from hard water that make towels feel stiff and scratchy in the first place. So it softens the fibers naturally by stripping away buildup rather than depositing a chemical film on top.
And I'm assuming the smell doesn't stick around.
No, because it's volatile, the vinegar scent evaporates completely during the drying cycle.
That's amazing. Okay, so softener is out, vinegar is in. What is the protocol for the detergent itself?
You have to ignore the claims on the front of the bottle, the plant-powered or gentle labels, and actually turn it over to read the ingredients. You need a detergent that is entirely free of fragrances, dyes, and optical brighteners.
Do the sources give any examples?
The clinical guidelines frequently point to established hypoallergenic lines, like all free clear, as the standard to aim for. Interestingly, dermatologists often recommend powder detergents over liquids.
Really? Why powder?
Powders don't require those same aggressive liquid biocides like MIT to stay stable on the shelf.
Oh, right, because there's no water for the mold to grow in. That makes so much sense. And we have to stop filling the cup to the brim, too.
Absolutely. Use roughly 1/3 to 1/2 of the manufacturer's suggested dose and implement a systematic extra rinse cycle for every single load.
Just standard practice?
Yeah, running an extra rinse physically forces more water through the fibers, which reduces residual surfactants by 30 to 50%. It is a massive reduction in your daily chemical exposure for the cost of just a few extra gallons of water.
That's a great tip. Let's clarify the water temperature, too, because I think a lot of people assume you have to wash everything on the hottest possible setting to actually get it clean and remove these residues.
That's a really common misconception that actually damages your clothes. For your everyday wardrobe, washing at 30 to 40 degrees Celsius, so about 85 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit, is perfectly effective for cleaning and allows the surfactants to rinse out properly.
Okay, so when do we use hot water?
You really only need the high heat of 60 degrees Celsius or 140 Fahrenheit for bed sheets and towels. That specific temperature is required to kill dust mites, which are a separate major trigger for eczema. But boiling your everyday t-shirts just breaks down the structural integrity of the fibers.
Which probably makes them scratchy.
Exactly, which can cause mechanical irritation against your skin.
Okay, so we've successfully detoxed the laundry routine. But how do the gynecological guidelines recommend caring for the actual skin, especially the vulva, which, as we established, is uniquely vulnerable to all of this?
So the universal consensus across all the medical literature for vulvar care is that less is more. The internal environment is entirely self-cleaning. For the external skin, the recommendation is to wash only once a day. Avoid all traditional soaps, shower gels, bubble baths, and absolutely no cleansing wipes.
So just use warm water.
Just warm water in your bare hand. Avoid washcloths, sponges, or loofahs. Because the tissue is so delicate and friable, like we talked about, those tools cause microabrasions that basically invite infection and inflammation.
But what if someone really feels like they need to use some kind of soap?
If someone feels they need a cleanser, the guidelines suggest using a plain medical emollient like an aqueous cream. It won't foam up, but the oils in the cream will gently lift away dirt without stripping the skin's vital lipid layer. Afterwards, just gently pat the area dry with a soft towel.
Got it. And for clothing, the rules are pretty straightforward from what I saw. White, 100% cotton underwear. Skip the synthetic nylons that trap heat. Avoid tight leggings that create friction. And they even recommend sleeping without underwear just to let the tissue recover overnight.
It really requires a total paradigm shift in how we approach personal hygiene. We have been trained to believe that cleanliness has a distinct, lingering perfume. But from a biological perspective, true cleanliness doesn't smell like a spring meadow. True cleanliness is the absolute absence of residue.
The absence of residue. That is a brilliant way to frame it.
Okay.
Okay, let's quickly recap what we've unpacked today. We started by looking under the microscope at how laundry detergents use surfactants to literally strip oils, and how synthetic fabric softeners are deliberately engineered to coat our clothes in an electrostatic chemical film.
Right, and then we explored the anatomy of the body's early warning system, detailing why the high permeability and, the physical environment of the vulva make it incredibly vulnerable to these trapped chemicals, especially as estrogen levels drop during menopause.
We dismantled the whole natural fragrance trap, exposing how essential oils oxidize into potent allergens, and how those hidden preservatives like MIT are driving a contact dermatitis epidemic. We even look at how EDCs and feminine hygiene products can cross the epithelial barrier.
And finally, we outlined the actionable defense, right? Ditching the fabric softener for white vinegar, switching to a fragrance-free powder detergent, utilizing that extra rinse cycle, and treating our skin's natural barrier with the respect it actually deserves.
It really leaves you with a totally new lens through which to view the modern world of household goods. And I want to leave you, the listener, with this final thought to just explore on your own. Consider how our modern obsession with long-lasting freshness is actually a massive evolutionary mismatch for our skin's delicate microbiome.
That's a really good point.
Right. Like the next time you see a commercial boasting about high-tech scent capsules that can keep a t-shirt smelling like a lavender field for a solid month, ask yourself, what kind of aggressive chemical wizardry is required to make a perfume survive a washing machine, a thermal dryer, and a full day of human sweat? And more importantly, do you really want that wizardry permanently pressed against your skin?